Misfits, before we jump into today's episode, I want to share something very special with you. After hosting over 450 episodes of The Misfit Entrepreneur and sitting down with some of the world's top founders, investors, and high performers, I started to notice something. Different industries, different backgrounds, different paths, but the same patterns kept showing up. So I distilled those patterns into a short, powerful guide called The Misfit Code: 21 Uncomfortable Truths from 450 plus entrepreneurs. This isn't motivational fluff, it's not theory, and it's definitely not the recycled advice that you hear everywhere else. In fact, it's a fast-paced, practical playbook that you can read in one sitting and then apply immediately to help you execute better, raise your standards, break through to your next level. And if you know you're capable of more, or you feel like you've outgrown where you are, or if you're tired of knowing what to do but not executing consistently, this guide was created for you. You can download it for free right now by going to misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/truths. Grab the guide, read it in one sitting, and then come back and work through one misfit truth per day. All right, with that said, let's jump into today's episode. Hello, Misfit Entrepreneurs. This is Dave Lukas, and welcome to another episode of the Misfit Entrepreneur, where it's our job to help you unleash your inner misfit and break through to higher levels of success, wealth, and fulfillment by bringing you the best insight from the world's top entrepreneurs with a specific focus on their misfit side, the specific traits, habits, and secrets that have allowed them to thrive and succeed. As a reminder, if you're new to watching us on our YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button below. Give this video a like and comment as well. We do our best to respond to all comments as timely as possible. This week's Misfit Entrepreneur is Rome Madison. Rome is a dynamic speaker, author, and sales leadership expert who has spent over 20 years helping individuals and organizations build confidence, navigate uncertainty, and achieve bold, ambitious goals. And he's worked at the forefront of the precision medicine industry. He's led, high growth teams. He scaled startups and, has helped navigate everything from massive success to corporate collapse and restructuring. And what makes Rome's story for me so powerful is not just what he's accomplished, but what he's overcome. So facing, a lot of adversity early in life to becoming a leader in business and voice for confidence and resilience, he's really built a philosophy around what he calls becoming an everyday superstar, something I'm really excited to unpack with him today. He focuses on helping people increase their confidence, embrace chaos, and rise and win. It's a message that he's delivered on stages throughout the globe, like CES and major media platforms. So I'm excited to dig into all of this with him on how confidence is engineered, how to use adversity as fuel, how to think like a media company to grow your brand, and what it really takes to win in business and life, especially when things get hard. So, Rome, are you ready to unleash your inner misfit?
Hey, Dave, let's get it cracking. Thanks for the invitation.
Well, it's great to have you on, man. And I kind of alluded to it. You've got, kind of like every story, it has its twists and turns and its challenge and adversity and things you went through to get where you're at. So take 5 minutes and just tell us, how'd you do it? How'd you get to where you're at?
First of all, thank you for doing what you're doing. I thank you for your podcast. I have always felt like a misfit in some sort of way, especially in my career. So the short story, as you so graciously read in your introduction, as a keynote speaker and a consultant, I help leaders in the healthcare space, whether it is the industry side or the provider side, who lead teams and responsible for profitability. I work with those teams to get their people to go all in on levels of success they've never experienced before. And the reason I can do that is from, the background that I've had over the last couple of decades, launching startup companies, launching new products in the life science space, specifically in the area of cancer genetics and genomics. But even before then, it really has been about the process of going all in. My background, I played college football at University of Missouri. I was an all-state player in state of Texas coming out of high school. But after football, like, nobody talks about this, and I don't know how many athletes you've had on your podcast, but when you lose that sport that you have been, playing your entire life, that people put you on a pedestal, they cheer your name, and you have this identity because you've been given this platform and then that's taken away from you, whether it is the end of your college career, end of your NFL career. You rarely know who you really are and what you really want to do. And so from that point has been about, self-discovery and being a lifelong learner. I love the quote that Jim Rome says. He says, formal education will make you a living, but self-education will make you a fortune. And that's been true for me. All along my career, I've done a lot of things right, certainly done a lot of things wrong. But through dedicating myself to being a lifelong learner, that's how I got in the genetics and genomics space anyway. I've self-taught. The same year that the Human Genome Project completed is the opportunity for me to interview for the first company that had any type of test that identified cancer patients that were most or least likely to respond to chemotherapy. And so I, as a foundation, came in at the very beginning stages, but because I was a lifelong learner and a student, I constantly fed myself, read, and became an informed observer of the industry. And that's the position that I hold now with my consulting firm, leadership development for the life science industry, and also my podcast.
It's interesting because to hear that story, it reminds me a lot of actually mine. I played football through college, and after college, I found my outlet in entrepreneurship, and ultimately in endurance racing too, to scratch the competitive itch in that that facet as well. The the story you tell is so true though, because you come out of of college from doing that, and you like I played from second grade all the way through college, so it's like part of your identity. And so yeah, like it's like a part of you is lost or gone, it's just not there anymore. And so you have to find that and figure it out. You have to actually ask yourself, like, what do I want and why do I want it, and like figure that out and figure out what scratches that itch. Because you don't ever really lose the competitive edge. I don't think you don't ever lose that kind of urge to compete and do that. And so you have to find that itch. And yeah, I agree, for some it's hard to do that. So for me it was entrepreneurship, and it was finding it in in business, and then ultimately endurance racing. But uh,
Hey man, sorry about that.
hey,
You froze
looks
up
like
on
you dropped off.
Yeah, you froze and
Where did you
glitched.
we'll cut this out. Where did you drop off at?
So when you started speaking after I stopped is where you froze up on my end.
All right, so we'll start from there, and I'll say it again. So just
Okay.
hold on one second. We'll just kind of reset and go. Rome, I love hearing that about just your story. It actually, in a lot of ways, reminds me of my own. I played ball from second grade all the way through college. And for me, like it's like coming out of college and everything, like I found a way to scratch the itch through entrepreneurship, and then ultimately endurance racing, because you never lose the competitive edge. You never lose like what you've, you know, kind of like what's been ingrained in your DNA ever since you're a kid to that point, right? So but I know people that haven't found a way to do that, and it was really hard for them. And you have to go through kind of this process of like, and I often say, like, most people don't get what they want because they don't know what they want, because they never sit down and ask themselves, like, what do I truly want, and challenge themselves on it to where they get really raw to the core, and true to themselves, right? And a lot of people don't do it because they're afraid of what they'll find doing that too. But that was one of the best exercises I ever did, and I did it early on. I was fortunate; I did it in my early 20s. Once I was leaving college and playing ball, and moving into the real world, and found that for myself. Another thing you said too, I think, is important, as you mentioned self education, and you mentioned like the Jim Rohn quote and stuff, which is a really famous quote, and then you talked about your journey, and I think you really epitomized something that I think is a very important thing for people to understand, especially now in today's world. It's probably easier than ever. Back when you were like self-teaching yourself, you didn't have AI, you didn't have any of that stuff to help you, accelerate, right? Because honestly, anything can be learned if you want to learn it bad enough. Like if I really want to become a rocket scientist and I really wanted to do it, I could go learn to become a rocket scientist. I would have to put the work in and the time and I could learn it. I don't want to. That's why I'm not one. But in today's age, it's right there at your fingertips. So there's no excuse not to self-educate and live how you want to live, I think, at this point. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a fact. Listen, okay, before I step up on the really big soapbox there, right? I mean, you just unpacked a lot. I am a believer that you have to accept 100% responsibility for the condition of your life, where you are in life, and the results in your life. Because there's so many people that make excuses or create excuses for themselves, and that just weakens your personal power. You got to be able to step in and boost your confidence in a moment. And that's what I teach executives. And I have a methodology. It's really self-acceptance, self-competence, and strategy. That acceptance piece is everything. Yes, we all weren't born with silver spoons and a paved, golden brick road in life. So what? It is what it is. But if you can start there and say, hey, whatever this is, I accept it. Now it's on me. The information is out there. If you read, if you get out there, if you talk to people, you network, you build a good reputation and credibility for yourself. The world is literally your oyster. And we don't have the time in this conversation to go down the people who started far worse than I did and created far more in their lifetime. But that is exactly it. You've got to be accepting of what it is wherever you are and just start there. Number one, there's no one like you in the world. You can't believe that you're less than anybody else because you're unique. You're one in a 300 billion. All right. And you have been equipped with all you need to accomplish and achieve whatever you want. That's the power that we have in our minds to dream, because those dreams, if we stick with them long enough, becomes visions. And those visions, I used to think the things that I wanted in my life, the cars, the house, the family, and all that stuff, that was the vision. That's not vision. Vision is how you see yourself. And if you are accepting of whatever condition you're in, and then you start to feed yourself empowering thoughts, ideas, read stories about people who created great things, educate yourself, become a subject matter expert, you will start to see yourself as the person who can do the things that you only conjure in your dreams. But it starts with acceptance. If you can't really see it with integrity in your mind, you'll never produce it in reality.
Yeah, absolutely true. There's some great points from that I want to dig further because what you started out, I thought you were going to go there, and you kind of did, but I know you deal with this. Um, the the victim mentality, or the what I call the role of the victim, where people put themselves in the role of the victim where they're not always victims. And you said something I think really important in the beginning of that, where until you take responsibility, you're ceding your power to someone or something or someone else. And so, like, these people that live as perpetual victims, they never have any power because it's always in control of something else on them. And when they do take it back, if they're fortunate to do that, it's the ultimate of what happens. It's the ultimate turnaround that you see from people because they're in charge at this point. They're not ceding that control to someone or something else or a situation or something like that. And the other thing that you said is, and you said it in a different way, but somebody said to me a long time ago, and it just jogged my memory: God doesn't make mistakes. And I don't know if most people realize that. You mentioned, like, you're one of, like, however many billion people, right? Do you know the chances of you being alive? You may know this. Do you know what they are?
It is infinitesimal.
It's 1 in 4 trillion.
Yeah.
So what that's equivalent to is if the city the size of Chicago, all the inhabitants were given each a trillion sided dice, and they all rolled it at the same time and came up with the same number. Literally, one rock hits another rock the wrong way in space in history, and you're not here. Like, it's insane, right? So you're not. There's no mistake. You are meant to be here for all of you. For whatever reason, you are meant to be here, and it's your job to figure that out and then maximize that on the world. So you can't
Couldn't have
do
said
that
it
if you're a
better.
victim.
Absolutely.
But how much do you deal with that in your coaching and your training? Do you see that people have just gotten to that funk where they're just like a perpetual victim of things? And what's it like when you snap them out of that?
Sad to say, it's really common. And it's more common because I deal with high achievers, executives, coaches, ex athletes, high income earners, high value people. And Dave, you might not be amazed, but I think the average person would be amazed how often they struggle with those feelings of victimhood, right? Self
And
doubt
why
is
why
some.
is it? Why do they have that? Why are they how what gets them to that point? I mean, they're successful and everything. So how do they struggle with that? Like what is the reasons why?
I think it's convenience. It's convenience because it's something out of their control, right? And so if it makes you feel bad, or if it disappoints you, or it creates a situation in your life where you feel that you've lost control, you look for something to attach that feeling to. So it's one thing to feel powerless. It's one thing to feel like you've been done wrong. It's one thing to feel like a victim. But what do we do with those feelings? We have to learn not to attach meaning to those feelings. So it's kind of that. And what I coach them to do in that acceptance piece is say, okay, so what? Now what? Because can you do anything
Mhm.
about it? Let's say that person did do you dirty. Let's say, you were undermined in this opportunity. Let's say your partner did beat you out of money. So what? Now what? If it never happened and you're in the same situation, what would you do? You've got to take back the power. We cannot give away our power sitting in our feelings and attaching meaning to them that take away our personal power. The way we do that is simply by saying, so what? Now what? That puts the ball right back into your hands, and you activate your personal power to make the next move, to make the next decision, to take the next step. And when you continue to say that to yourself, you realize that whatever excuse or person or object or situation in life that you've been accustomed to attaching to things, you become now addicted to the so what now what, because you feel stronger, you feel more powerful, and you move with greater intention that gets you the results that you actually want.
I was going to ask you the question. You're into it now, so I'll ask you if there's anything else to add because one of the things that you talk about is like confidence can be engineered, right? It's not something you're necessarily born with, right? So, like, what else can you add to what you just said? I guess that helps people understand how they can build their own confidence and everything else that they need to really take that control that they deserve to have of themselves and their life and their destiny and their success and all of that.
Yeah, I appreciate you asking that. So here's the thing about confidence. Confidence is everybody has confidence. Everybody has it. We're all confident in something that someone else may not be confident in. I'm confident that I can, cook some good ribs, right? Whatever. Yeah, I'm confident that I can drive my car to the grocery store and back. So we all have confidence. But what happens is we get distracted by noise, we get distracted by our feelings and emotions, and we attach it to something that is a cause. And then we lose confidence and we become, fearful, anxious, guilty, shameful, whatever it is. So in those moments where you feel those emotions, you have to get back to that paradigm. Accept it. I feel that. Right. And for those of you who have, I'm a mindfulness person. I've had a mindfulness practice for years, and I highly recommend it. You've got to develop the skill of activating your personal power when it counts. There are leaders, there are executives, there are coaches out there, there are athletes who have high self-confidence but low self-esteem. Okay. But even in those moments where your own feelings of self-worthiness are challenging, you have to anchor yourself with, okay, I feel that. That's a thought. Let it pass, just like the wind blowing and the wind stops. Anchor yourself in what you know about yourself, what's confident, and then have a plan to move forward, the strategy. This is a way to silence the noise in your head and really zero in when the stakes are high, when times are tough and everybody else is losing their mind. This is why confidence is so important. That's why quarterbacks are paid the highest bucks in the NFL. That's why coaches and executives make the salaries that they do. Because when you have to make a choice that affects a lot of people, you've got to anchor yourself in that confidence. And times aren't going to always be great when you have to make a tough decision. And you've got to anchor yourself to be able to make good choices based on the information you have to move forward with a strategy.
Yeah,
So
that's
it's
a
a skill.
great point too. That's a great point on leadership. In fact, I want to talk a little bit more about on this leadership topic and some things surrounding it. So we're going to take just a quick break. We'll be right back. Misfit entrepreneurs, I want to tell you about an amazing resource that will have tremendous impact on your business and your revenue. I have used this solution in multiple businesses and it has made an incredible difference. Let me start by asking you something. Do you know how much it costs your business when just one salesperson doesn't step up to deliver? Do you really know? The cost can easily exceed six figures for just one bad hire, not just from the time, effort, and resources in hiring them, but from the lost business and downtime as well, as you have to go find a new salesperson and everything surrounding that. And the last thing any growing business can afford is to have a failed hire, especially in sales, the revenue driver for the company. But what if there was a way to know someone checked all the boxes of a great sales hunter and closer before you ever hired them? That's the solution that I found from a company called Sales Drive. They have created a solution called Drive Test. It's a powerful hiring tool that separates high performance salespeople from pretenders by measuring the most critical personality trait needed for success in sales: drive. Drive is composed of three non-teachable traits shared by all top producers: the need for achievement, competitiveness, and optimism. And knowing who has drive before the interview dramatically increases your chances of selecting salespeople who will produce for you while avoiding those costly bad hires. I've used the solution and it works. In fact, it works so well, I've referred them to every company that I work with. And they've created a very special offer so that you can try them for free as well. You can get a free drive test assessment today at www.misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/sales drive, all one word. Start using the drive test in your hiring and never hire a bad salesperson again. All right, so Rome, you were talking about leadership, and why, leaders, at certain levels are paid more and stuff because they have to make the big decisions and then be responsible for them and all of that. And there's that wisdom that comes with that, I think, through time as well too. But you also talk about you teach these executives and coach them on like being an everyday superstar, right? So like, what's an everyday superstar in the context of what we've talked about so far? What's it look like?
So I'll take you back when before I got into the genetics and genomics industry. A year before that, I was unemployed. So, if we're on video here, so I don't know if people can see if you're on YouTube, but if you're not, like, I've got my degree in my office. I graduated from University of Missouri. I'm a Mizzou Tiger, but my degree says General Studies 2.5 GPA. Okay, it doesn't have my GPA on that, thank God. My kids do laugh at me. But here's the thing. It is the habit that we have in our culture with attaching who we are in to the titles, the accoutrements, the neighbor, whatever the things that we accumulate in life. We believe that makes us who we are. And so when social media came around that year before I got into this industry, I was unemployed, and that's when I had to go to Barnes and Nobles, Borders Books, and get books about cancer and genetics off the shelf to copy them, right? To actually go to the interviews and show up well. Well, obviously, I got into the space, but it was so transformational, that experience of leaning into this methodology that I teach around confidence. But an everyday superstar is exactly that. You're not a superstar because of who you know, who knows you, what you have, the money you make, the car you drive. You're a star when you're connected to what's special inside of you. And when you embrace that and use more of it to serve the world around you, you become a light to the world, as my favorite book says. And that's what an everyday superstar is. Understanding who you really are, absent of all these things. My degree in GPA never made me who I was, even though some employers believe it did. As long as I got an opportunity to get to the table, I can shine. And that's what an everyday superstar is. You show up regardless of what you do, what your title is, and all those things, and you shine your light on others. And as you shine a light on other people, but just by being your dynamic self that you've created to be, doing what you enjoy, it inspires other people to search for that light in themselves. So that's what an everyday superstar is. I turned that into a keynote. That it's the title of my first book. Star is the teaching mechanism that I have with that, understanding that you're special, being tenacious about what's special about you, just sticking with it and building that. If you do that, you will attract all the things that you want into your life. But when you attract it, you have to be 100% responsible for it. That's what an everyday superstar is and how they operate.
Oh, I love the STAR acronym. That's pretty awesome. And as I think about this, because you alluded to it, you said you were unemployed, right? So you've experienced like both massive success. You've had like been unemployed, corporate collapse. I know through history and stuff like that, right? So what have you learned about how to personally, I guess, reframe failure to really, I guess, amplify your drive instead of diminish it? And as an athlete, I think we all kind of have we learn how to do that, right? Because you got to overcome loss and that sort of thing. But in once you get past sports into the world, it is still it's different and it's its own set of challenges. So how do you handle that?
Dave, you mentioned like you're an athlete, you're a runner. I cannot run anymore. I have to do low impact, by the way. But, we were fortunate being athletes because that taught us how to deal with failure. It taught us how to compete. And the way I help people reframe failure is to help them understand that failure is not final. It's only feedback. Failure is a necessary part of the success journey. And you have to lean into improving. You have to lean into competing. You have to lean into stretching and challenging yourself, even if you fall short of your expectation or goals, because you're a lot further than what you would have been if you would not have tried. And so I teach these high achievers to embrace it because that's the only way you're going to learn. And I had a CEO who's a mentor of mine. He once told me, fail fast. Because if you fail fast, you learn fast, and then you get to where you need to go faster.
Yeah, and I'd agree. I people have heard this before. I think this is in a way this concept's been beaten to death, but failure is ultimately a great teacher if you embrace it, and it ultimately will help you in so many other ways in your life and everything else. Because I mean, and you mentioned like there's stories upon stories of people from Steve Jobs to everybody you hear about and in between, but if you look at the most of those stories, right? They're praised in public for, everything they've done in private for that
That's right.
nobody ever saw. But really, a lot of that is a series of just like failures and keeping it going, right? The old Thomas Edison 10,000 ways to, create the light bulb. And so that's it. It's just to keep going in spite of it, in spite of fear, in spite of everything else in front of you, and just like keep it up. And that, to me, that's entrepreneurship too. I always say we spend a lot more time. It's a series of peaks and valleys. We spend a lot more time in the valleys than we do the peaks, but the peaks are oh so worth it when you get there. They don't necessarily last forever, but they're some of the best times, and that's what keeps you going in the valleys. And every time it's like leveling up. Like every time you get through a valley, you're at like a new level and a new level and a new level. And for me, that's I love that, right? That's like that just gets me going. Is like, where's the next peak? Where's the next valley? Where are we leveling up? What's the plateau? Where do we overcome? And that's fun for me at this point. But I think as humans, like it's naturally ingrained in us, like to be seeking, to overcome into the next thing and the bigger thing, not in a bad way, but like what is like the best version of ourselves, right? And so like it's kind of a metaphor for all areas of life, I guess I would say. Not just business, but it's an important one to have perspective on when you're in it, because there's a lot of times I want to quit too. So
Yeah,
I think you feel the same way. So I don't know if you have any other further thoughts on it, but that's kind of how I see it.
it is. It's the peak and valleys. We don't spend a lot of time in the peak, and you actually don't spend a lot of time in the valley. You usually are on the slopes. So
Yeah,
you're
you're right.
sliding down, which can be fun, but sometimes it's not because we wanted to stay on the peak. And then you've got
Yeah.
to climb again. And that's called the work. Right?
Hmm.
So when you're in the valleys, it's usually a number of reasons why you find yourself there. Many of them are out of your control. But again, we've got to say, so what, now what, to regain your power as to what step you can take to start the climb again. So, I mean, I love that analogy, but we've got to embrace it because it is the journey that makes us who we are. I'm a firm believer, based on my background and my life's journey, that the things that happen to us must happen to us in order to
Hmm.
move us and grow us into the person that we need to be in this universe.
Yeah, I think that's a great point too. And I feel a lot the same way. Everything had to happen exactly as it did to get me right here talking to you right now, and I wouldn't change a thing. The good, the bad,
Facts.
all in between, right? Because that's what it took to get there. Um, to that point, that actually reminds me, because I mentioned it in the opening. I wanted to come around to the topic of it. Um, Chaos, right? So navigating chaos. A lot of times, people are we're talking about this stuff, but hey, we're the peaks and valleys got chaos and everything with them and stuff. And I've actually coined this term over the years. When it's kind of a human nature. It points to blow up things, and I don't mean like with physically, but like blow up in the sense of like everything's going like how many people have you ever seen that like everything's going right, they're doing everything well, it's consistent, but they do it so long that they just can't take it anymore, and they like blow it up and ruin it all. Like they just up and quit and go do something else, right? Like I call it the chaos switch. Like we all have one, right? And understanding it, being aware of it and keeping it at bay where it needs to be kept at bay, and using it where it makes sense to use it is a really important thing. So talk about how you like coach people to use chaos to their advantage, but also, make sure they keep it at bay so it doesn't, ruin a good thing for them.
Absolutely. So here's something and we can unpack this. This could be a whole another podcast here, but the thing about chaos, this is where I tell leaders to look for chaos and learn to anchor yourself in the storm, because the typical nature of chaos, as you said, is there's just so many moving parts. Everybody's focused on everything. There's a lot of chatter. People are anxious. And what they're looking for is an anchor. Chaos, and there is a story that I've heard. There's an ancient Mandarin Chinese symbol that represents chaos, but it's the same symbol that communicates or represents opportunity. Whenever there is chaos, when things are uncertain, it is the leader who should be the anchor. And a good analogy that I have there is we've all seen like gymnasts doing these you can't even count how many twists and turns they're doing, and they land on their feet. You see the high dive, platform divers doing all this stuff, and they go in the water, fingernails first. How do they do that? By focusing on a single point. When chaos happens and you see everything around, you've got to be the leader that focuses on a single point. And here's the thing. It may not be the right thing to focus on. It might not be, but it is a single thing that you can speak to, that you can paint a picture of, and that you can get other people to stop focusing on everything else and to focus on that one empowering thought, that problem, something that you can solve, something that you can do to activate their power to go all in on that one thing. So I coach leaders to look for the chaos, look for signs of chaos, because this is where you shine. This is where you exert your influence and ascend as a leader that people look to, because any organization, whether it's a team, whether it's a church, whether it is anything, they're looking for that big picture. What's that big thing that I can relate to? That big vision that my leaders are talking about or articulating, because if they can see that big vision, we as individual contributors see visions for ourselves that are aligned with that big vision. So chaos is an opportunity. And if you are equipped with the skill of activating your confidence when everybody else is losing theirs, you can be the light that gets people to focus, to move in one direction and go all in on things they've never done before.
I love the point that chaos is an opportunity. Because it is. Uh, I liken to this. And I think everybody, this is probably a lot of what you coach people through. High performers deal with this the most. And we get, and you probably have this too. You get to these points where like you get overwhelmed, not because things are like bad, but because you see so much opportunity that you could be doing. And you have so many things on your mind that, can move the needle and do this and everything else that you literally you become overwhelmed. And it's like, it's for some people that creates anxiety for them. The thing that I found in those times is like when I'm stuck like that, I'm like overwhelmed because it's like, holy crap, I've got this and I can do this opportunity. I should be doing this and here. Like if I sit down for 20 minutes and I just write it all out, then I can
I'm
pick the
laughing
one thing.
because
Yeah. Just
that's
write it
me
all
almost
out.
every Sunday and Monday. I'm
Yeah.
like, okay,
You
I
just
gotta
pick
get.
the one thing and you go execute and you just go on down that list, and some things fall off because like, okay, that's not that important. But like that little exercise like that just removes like all of the chaos in my head, and for others. And so, there's that point of like focusing and finding that one thing that, like to me, that's how I do it. Right. But that's a really good point because people try to focus on everything where if you just pick one, get that straight, and it makes the next one easier and easier and easier. It's like a snowball, rolling down a hill. So I think that's a really important point for people to understand because especially entrepreneurs, go through this all the time. The last question I have for you before we get to your Misfit 3 is, you've had 20 plus years of leadership and, a lot of business growth, sales leadership, right? So what have you found, especially when it comes to like building a business and building the sales side of a business? What is it that are the most important pillars of like building a high growth organization? I think anybody listening to this, listening to you speak, with your experience, I think your wisdom there could really help any entrepreneur, better their business. So what are those pillars for you?
So the starting point of every great organization is purpose. Why do you exist? What problem are you solving and for who? Every organization has to have that in their DNA. So no matter what business you have, even before you start to create product and take it to the market, you'd be amazed, Dave, how many companies don't talk to their customers and create something that they think is great. Some of them do very well because they've got a great purpose. But generally speaking, if you understand who you're intentioned to help or whose problem you want to go to the market and solve, you have a deep sense of purpose about that. And so that's first in terms of building an organization, getting people to go all in, is to have a purpose that is meaningful, that people can embrace. The second thing is vision. The leader, and this is any organization, a confused mind says no. We all know that. But also, we just talked about it. If you have a leader that can articulate a vision of this is our purpose and this is what we're going to do to accomplish this or to create this, and paint the big picture of that problem solved, or the people that you seek to serve being fulfilled. That has to be a vision. My favorite book says, the people perish for lack of vision. And that's true in any organization. You can have a great purpose, but if you don't have a visionary leader that can continue to articulate that vision and expand that vision in the mind of an organization, you're going to fall flat because people won't go all in because they're not inspired to give more of themselves to the organization.
Right.
And I think, the third thing, again, it has got to be acceptance, right? Everybody has to know that you are enough, that you are capable. And even where you fall short, right, there's got to be a practice of growing your self-esteem, your self-confidence, your self-competence, and getting to a strategy to do the things that you need to do. So that acceptance piece of bringing yourself, being yourself, because you can't be anybody else if you try to mimic somebody. And I know that's natural. It's human nature for us to emulate the people that we admire or we aspire to be. But you've got to know who you are and accept you and bring your full self to the things that you do. And if you don't, you're just only a cheap copy of someone else and not authentically yourself. So that is something that I think a lot of
Great
organizations
point.
miss by not pouring into their people, not building their people, and getting them to show up in a way that's authentic and real, because that's where people want to stay, grow, and inspired to do the things that their leaders are leading them to do.
Yeah, that's a great point. It's a great way to end it too before we get to your Misfit 3. So we're going to do that. We're going to take just another quick break. We're going to come right back with Rome's Misfit 3.
Misfits. People ask me all the time about tools that I use in my life and business to maximize my success. I usually start by telling them one of my most powerful tools is my morning habits. And of course, they look at me somewhat confused. I then explain how important it is for me to center myself and how I begin my day and plan for my success. It's critical to consistent high performance, and it doesn't take me long, about 5 or 10 minutes, because I use a great resource called the 5-Minute Journal. The 5-Minute Journal is the simplest, most effective way I've ever found to start your day in the right mindset, doing the right things, and set yourself up for success. And it is exactly what it says, a 5-minute exercise you can do each day. Let me ask you, if you could reach your next level in your life and business by spending just 5 minutes of focused time a day, would you do it? I bet you would. And I know it works because I've experienced the power of it. And you can get your 5-minute journal simply by going to www.misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. That's misfitentrepreneur.com/journal. Do what I do. Use this amazing resource to give yourself an edge in your performance and your success. Get your 5-minute journal today.
Okay, it's time for Rome's Misfit 3. These are the 3 things that he wants you to take that you can put in your life, your business, make a difference for yourself starting today. And the way they always frame this to every guest that comes on the show is I say, hey, look, if you're going to leave this earth tomorrow and you can only leave behind your 3 best pieces of wisdom to the generations that come after you to help them live their best life, what would those 3 things be? So, Rome, what are your Misfit 3?
So the first thing is be a voracious reader. There are books about anything that you can imagine. And I know it's 2026. There is ChatGPT. There is Google. There is, my gosh, the access to information is unreal these days. There is no excuse for you. If you want to learn something, do something. There's a freaking YouTube video about it. You can learn it. So you've got to be a voracious reader. Again, we said at the top of this conversation, Dave, formal education will make you a living. And that's true. You can get your bachelor's degree. You can get a law degree. You can go to, be an MD. But self-education can make you a fortune. It is what you learn from life. It is what you learn on your own dime and time that really make your life meaningful and significant. So that's the first thing, is become a student of life, lifelong learner. The second thing is seek mentors. I heard this quote somewhere, but I forget where it was, but some people are so sure of what they know that they cannot see the future differently. The shortcut to any success you want is to find a mentor. A mentor's job is to challenge you, to stretch yourself. A mentor's job is to give you information and challenge you to go put that in action, so to get the growth that you say you want. Now, here's the thing. There's a difference between a mentor and a role model. A role model is just somebody that you admire from afar, and you can model yourself, your behavior, your path after that person. But mentorship is different. There's an obligation there between the mentor and the mentee. So when I say seek mentorship, seek to put yourself under the tutelage of someone who will give you direction and make yourself accountable to that person who is challenging you to get the best out of you. So seek mentorship. I wish I would have learned that earlier in my life. And then the third thing is to dream bigger, and specifically dream bigger about the impact that you can make while you live. Going back to our conversation, Dave, we're all unique. You are special. It is amazing that you beat one out of how many million sperm to become a human. You cannot believe that you're just some walking piece of putty walking around this floating rock in space. You are divine creation meant to make an impact. You have 10 fingerprints that have never existed in the world ever. You can travel the world, touch a dish, a piece of paper, a doorknob, and you leave your fingerprint. And that reason is you're meant to make your mark in this world while you live. So believe in your power of dreams. We're the only creation on earth that has the power of choice, rational thought, and dreams to think beyond the reality that we see to create the reality that we truly desire.
Well, that's an excellent Misfit 3, and I especially do love that last one. That fingerprint analogy is so good. Thank you for sharing that. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
The best place to go is to iwantmorenow.com. While you're there, you can download a couple of free items. I've got the book that I talked about, Claim Your Star Power, 4 Steps to Start Where You Are and Achieve Superstar Success. And then my latest audiobook is called Everyday Star Power, the 12-Step Confidence Algorithm. I'd love for you to have that and to give me your feedback on how they're serving you.
Awesome. Perfect. We'll link to all that in the show notes, the best show notes in the business, for reasons I will talk about more in a second. But first, for those of you that are new to the Misfit Entrepreneur, it's your first episode with us. Welcome. It's such an honor to have you with us. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And I hope you become a regular subscriber or watcher of the show. And for those of you that are with us week in and week out, I cannot thank you enough for your support of the show. You are what makes this go in over 100 countries every single week. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And make sure and go out and check out the show notes of this episode. They are the best in the business. Why? Because I do them myself as part of just my personal growth habits and routine. I go back through these episodes with great guests like Rome, and then I take my best pieces of insight and tips and tricks and things like that, and I share those with you. So go check those out. And then go out and give this episode a rating and review, like and comment on it. Help share Rome's message, because we all know I say this in every episode. One great episode can change someone's life. Maybe something that Rome shared today was that missing link you were looking for to get to your next level. So share this with others. And again, Rome, thank you so much for coming on, sharing all your wisdom and insight today.
Hey, man, it's an honor. Thank you for what you're doing.